You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is June 24th, 2025, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. Today's show, we are going to do a focus on recent events with the war between Iraq and Israel, and apparently now us. So that's a recent development. But we're specifically going to talk about issues related to how things are going in the war, issues with our intelligence. Is this really our war? And then on our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, we are going to hit some of the outlandish ideas of The View about Iran and how that compares to U.S. society. But before we get into any of that, let me introduce you to our panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. My name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So we always like to start out with a quote that's kind of related to the topic we are going to discuss. And for that today, it's the first time we're going to have a quote from Mr. Machiavelli. So let me bring that up here. And his quote is that wars begin when you will, but they do not end when you please. And of course, Machiavelli was a Renaissance political philosopher, and he is most known for the book The Prince, that talks a lot about how politicians can keep themselves in power. To me, I think this is a pretty relevant quote, given a lot of people are talking that this might be a short war. And I did want to play a little clip to go with this before everybody starts commenting, because I wanted to remind everybody about a recent conflict that we got into where we were under the impression it was going to be very short and not very costly. So let us show that clip here.
My fellow Americans, major combat operations in Iraq have ended. In the Battle of Iraq, the United States and our allies have prevailed.
It was 5 years ago when President Bush stood on the deck of the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln under a banner blaring "Mission Accomplished." Now the White House is admitting there were problems with that.
President Bush is well aware that the banner should have been much more specific.
Spokeswoman Dana Perino says the phrase "Mission Accomplished" referred to the sailors on the ship. She says not being clear has cost the White House. The banner has become a symbol of U.S. misjudgments and mistakes in the long and costly war still being waged in Iraq. More than 4,000 members of the military have died there since the beginning of the war in March 2003. Judy Boysha, The Associated Press.
So, a war that we were kind of all under the impression, mission accomplished, everybody cheered. And before we knew it, it was almost, 6-7 years later, at least. That thing went on into the teens, I think. Mm-hmm. And we cost us, trillions of dollars. So, what do you guys think about Mr. Machiavelli's quote?
Well, I think the quote is really saying that politicians lie, and they lie to us quite frequently, quite frankly, because they always tell you whenever we are about to, in this particular case, we're talking about war, they always tell us that this is going to be a quick war, it's going to be a quick fix, we're going to get it done and get out. And then 20 years later, we are still in there. If you think about Afghanistan was supposed to be easy pickings, Maybe we had legitimate concerns there. We went in there, and then Biden had this disastrous withdrawal. How many 22 years later, or whatever it was. So it always the issue about these wars is that they use this quick fix narrative to convince the public to support their interventions wherever they want to go, and then they get into this nation building. War is one thing, right? You whatever, you declare war and you go to war and you want to fight your war. But the issue becomes when the military gets involved in nation building, and that has been a disaster for us. And this nation building, and this is exactly what happened in Afghanistan, and to some extent, well, not to some extent, and this is exactly what happened in Iraq also. So it's this nation building stuff that we get involved with is where this nonsense really gets deep. So the war will begin is popular, but it will never end, like Machiavelli said, when you're when at your will. It just can't, because usually we get into nation building.
Yeah, I agree with Leon on everything he said. The only other additional motivator behind some of these extensions of warfare is the money the military-industrial complex makes by continuously funding the weapons used and the uniforms worn, the bullets shot, and all the ancillary, the fuel and everything used throughout the engagements and the building too, as far as that, the vested interests that have political clout that are involved, like BlackRock and other private entities that are secretly encouraging these kinds of forays and nation building and so on, that are making money off of it. So it's easy easy pickings. The easy pickings is for them.
Yeah. Well, and to kind of hammer that home, Tim, I did want to bring up a visual when you talk about the money of the military-industrial complex here, and this is the debt, from our treasury.gov here. And so you can see in about 2001, which is, around the time Bush was entering office, we were at $10 trillion. We're now at 37 trillion. And when we entered the Iraq war, I think that was around 2003, I think.
Yes,
so,
it was.
So 11.5 trillion. And that's where the mountain gets steep. That's where we needed to get our mountain climbing supplies on this debt here, because it's just nuts. And what do we have to show for it, right? I mean, this is part of the problem of so much adventurism, and I think this is super relevant too, because this happens to be the neighbor of a country that we're currently now potentially entangling ourselves with. It may not work out the same way as Iraq, but I hopefully people are looking at this as a potential lesson here, and we don't get carried away, because I don't know that we can afford this war. So.
Well, the one thing I have to say, Jason, before we leave this topic, I think this must be said. Okay, I don't think the dangerous thing is the politicians who lie to us and get involved in all of these foreign wars and all this nation building stuff. That's not the danger here. That's not the danger to the republic. The danger to the republic is a complacent electorate. That's the danger to the republic. We allow these politicians to lie to us, to give us all these nice, sweet, glorious things, and then we vote them back into office after they've been doing all the disasters all these years. So that is the danger to the republic, is a complacent citizenry. That is the danger.
Yeah. And I think that's often the case in every conflict we get into. Often people can't even find these places on a map in general, as far as your average citizen. And yet here we are, riled up to think it's the most important thing to do. But anyways, I think we're going to really get into a lot of these topics as we go through. So let's start off by giving a little bit of background about what the status is and sort of how we got to where we're at. Obviously it's all over the news right now, and I'm going to play a little bit of a video here just to give a little bit of background about how it started and where we got into it.
Israeli Air Force jets taking off to intercept at least 100 Iranian drones Friday. Retaliation from Tehran for last night's airstrikes.
We will not let the world's most dangerous regime get the world's most dangerous weapons.
In the dark of night, Israel launched a wave of strikes on Iran, targeting its nuclear program and military sites. Israel says at least 3 of Iran's top military commanders were killed, and its largest uranium enrichment site was damaged.
When enemies vow to destroy you, believe them. When enemies build weapons of mass death, stop them.
In Washington, President Donald Trump says he was aware Israel was going to attack, although he was advocating for a diplomatic solution, with the U.S. holding several rounds of talks with Iranian officials. On Truth Social, Trump wrote, "I gave Iran chance after chance to make a deal. I told them in the strongest of words to just do it, no matter how hard they tried, no matter how close they got. They just couldn't get it done."
So that was the opening salvo that occurred a little over a week ago in this war. And It was only just a couple days ago then that Trump had our military engage with bunker buster bombs dropped on Iran's nuclear sites.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. Continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left.
So there you have it. And of course, potentially a spectacular success like in the Iraq war. It was over so fast. But, it is something that Trump has declared that the war is over and there's a ceasefire. But even with the ceasefire, we found out there was a little bit of trouble with that. And I'm going to play a little bit of video to show what's going on with that.
The skies over the Persian Gulf were on fire again. 14 Iranian ballistic missiles fired into neighbouring Qatar, sparking panic. The stated target, America's biggest military station in the Middle East, the Al Udeid Air Base, revenge for the weekend attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities. But this was all for show. All but one of the missiles were shot down and it was allowed to detonate in nearby desert. A Donald Trump deal, Iran allowed to save face after warning America its phantom attack was coming.
And we think they gave us some warning because they didn't want to kill Americans and they didn't want to escalate. There's definitely some symbolism to this.
In Tehran, they celebrated a great strike against America, they were told. But Donald Trump was 2 moves ahead. Before the smoke had even cleared, the war was over. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire, at which point the war will be considered ended. Most importantly, they've gotten it all out of their system.
But no sooner had Trump called for the ceasefire than Iran and Israel were already shooting at each other again.
Israel says that Iran violated the peace agreement and the ceasefire agreement. Do you believe that Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. When I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because the one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land, I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have 2 countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
And so there you go. It's maybe we're at a ceasefire right now. that's kind of the status, but it does kind of bring back that quote. Again, he thought it was over, and it may be over, but we're not sure. What do you guys thoughts on the current status of what's going on and our role in it?
Tim, we can go.
I don't know. It's well, it looks like it's day 13 of the 12-day war, so or day 14. I don't know what, but yeah, this could go on a lot longer, and it could get really ugly. That's the thing. Once you light the fuse, off you go, and we're just gonna have to wait and see. I guess it's too late now to cover whether he was justified or, whether there really was a threat and so on and so forth. It's all kind of behind us now. And now it's like, now what do you do? And Iran is none too interested in going into, kind of diplomacy type negotiations and getting a showing what they are doing and being forthright, even though they weren't. They were hiding a majority of their highly enriched plutonium. So they've been hiding that all along. The IAEA doesn't even know where it's at, or whatever it is.
IAEA.
Yeah, IAEA.
Yes.
Yeah. They don't even know where it all is, and they're the inspections. So, and we don't, they don't know that it was even destroyed, also. And so, this is just getting started. I don't think it's going to end. And go back to Machiavelli quote. Yeah, I think it's not going to end right away.
Well, we'll hope and pray for peace. However, there are some things that maybe should be said here. Number one, I think it was widely reported, and I think no one denied it, that Iran was enriching uranium. They were at 60% already. That is way beyond civilian use. Okay, I mean, we have enrichments going on all over the world. Only people who tend to weaponize that enriched uranium will get above the 20-25% range.
Leon, just to cement that too, nobody disagrees with that. I don't even think the Iranians disagree that they had that level of enriched uranium. So
exactly.
This is important because there are some, there are some facts that are in dispute, maybe, but this doesn't seem to be one of them.
Yeah. So I don't think that's in dispute. You're very right about that, Jason. The other thing too that is important here to be said: these people in Iran believe they have a religious mandate, a mandate from God, to destroy the state of Israel. Okay, so I sure like hell don't think they have any right to have that mandate. So when they're reaching uranium at a level that they were doing so at 60% level, and they could easily get to 70-80%, we have to be worried about this. If they decide to follow their mandate, which they believe probably came from God, we could have some real problems if they ever get these weapons. So should the United States, get involved? I mean, I have some mixed feelings about that, because I sure like hell don't want to sit down and watch one of our allies. Now, there are a lot of controversy about the fact that Israel is one of our allies, and there are a lot of people who have a lot of issues with that. That's fine. But I don't think I want to sit down and stay quiet while one of our allies are being destroyed, or the potential for it being placed right in front of us, and we say nothing and do nothing about it. This country, Iran, they started a war with Israel. They started a war. And if you think I'm hyperbole, Hamas is funded by Iran, and so is Hezbollah. They started this war, and now they want to come whine to the world about what Israel and the United States is doing to them. No, I'm not going to accept that. I do not accept that. These people believe in their mandate. And when they tell you that they're going to wipe Israel off the map, I want to believe them. Okay? And if we believe them, we cannot be silent about this.
Well, one of the things too that you mentioned there is that, while they do have uranium that's on the way towards something that could become a nuclear bomb, that's at 60%, they're saying, enrichment. It's now the question becomes, whose intel do you believe on? How far away is that from actually getting a bomb? And this is one of the big questions we have, because Trump's own DNI, Tulsi Gabbard. So she is the head of the Department of National Intelligence, I guess it is, and she had recently come out several months ago and said that Iran was not on track for this. So it begs the question, if she said that, then whose intel is it that we're using, that we're getting this from? And so I did have a little video. I was planning to talk about this later in the show, but since we've kind of gotten here already, I think I'll bring up this video right here to show some of the issue here with conflicting information.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program.
What intelligence do you have that Iran is building a nuclear weapon? Your intelligence community has said they have no evidence that they are at this point.
Well, then my intelligence community is wrong. Who in the intelligence community said that?
Your Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
She's wrong. Well,
So as we see here, Trump is doubting his own intelligence advisor, Tulsi Gabbard. However, he seems to be getting his intelligence from Israel.
I'm sorry, but I've been in the news business for 20 years now, and every single one of them, I've heard him say that Iran is months, at most a couple of years away from getting a nuclear bomb. Every single one of them. And we pulled a little montage of it over the years, but I mean, we could have gone back to the 1990s with Bibi doing this. Here's just a sampling.
The most dangerous of these regimes is Iran. Only the United States can lead this vital international
96.
effort to stop the nuclearization of terrorist states. But the deadline for attaining this goal is getting extremely close.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb.
2012.
By next spring, at most, by next summer,
12.
at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage. From there, it's only a few months, possibly a few weeks, before they get enough enriched uranium for the first bomb.
You don't want this Iran to have neither nuclear weapons or the capability to make nuclear weapons, to enrich uranium for a nuclear bomb in short order, in a few weeks or a few months. They could do that unless that's changed.
With this massive capacity, Iran could make the fuel
15.
for an entire nuclear arsenal, and this in a matter of weeks, once it makes that decision.
So that said, it's interesting because, let me bring it back up, but Tulsi has flipped on what she said several months ago. This really begs the question. I mean, what information is it that's leading us? I mean, this feels a lot like the what do they call it? Yellow cake? Was it during the whole Iraq war, where that was big? That was the buzzword that got us all to believe that Saddam Hussein was ready to, send his WMDs after us. So, what do you guys think about this?
Well, I have a question first, Jason. Are you, in this headline here says that she flipped on Iran. Does that mean that she used to think that Iran was close to a nuclear weapon, and now that she's director of intelligence?
No. It's the other way, Tim. That was 2 months ago. This article is from June 2020 or June 21. So it's just a few days ago. And now she is contradicting what she said to Congress like 2-something months ago.
So what is she saying now?
She's saying that they are a threat and that they could be weeks to months away from a nuclear weapon.
Well, then why in that first one, and all along that I've heard, is that her last and her previous reports have said that Iran is not working on a nuclear weapon.
Well, yeah, Tim, that's the question. We showed it from a few months ago. How do we know what to believe here, right? I mean, this is
okay. But the last report she sent to the president was about 2 weeks ago. In that report, it said Iran is not working on a nuclear weapon, according to her intelligence sources. Mm-hmm. So how is she flipping? I don't get it. Where's the flip?
She claims now she's seen intelligence, right? From where? That begs the question, right? I mean, certainly Bibi is out there and, this year saying that, again, they are maybe within a year of getting a nuclear weapon again.
Well, we know we can't trust him. He's always thinking that they're, a couple of weeks away. And he's been saying that for the last couple of decades. And, you can't believe a single word out of his mouth. But you're saying that now Tulsi is saying that they are getting close to a nuclear weapon and they're working on one? Is that what you're saying?
That's what she's conveying to the public. And I said, it's sort of a trust me type of thing, right? Because we're not getting to see that information. Leon, have you heard anything different?
No, I haven't. Okay, and I mean, clearly, well, Tulsi was always an anti-war, anti-foreign intervention. She always was, and her statement recently is the one that you just played is consistent with that kind of notion of her being anti-war, anti-interventions, and that kind of stuff. But Jason, we just agreed that 60% enrichment level that Iran was accomplishing is not in dispute. But there's something else that's also not in dispute. That if you're going to use your uranium for only civilian purposes, you do not need to enrich beyond 20-25%. That is not in dispute either.
But it does beg the question, Leon, why on earth then did she testify the other way to Congress? Because that 60% wasn't in dispute several months ago either.
I totally agree with you. That there's some kind of disconnect between Tulsi and the intelligence agency, and then a disconnect between Tulsi and Trump. Okay, I'm not arguing that point, but the point I am trying to make here, the biggest piece of evidence that we have that there's something going on in Iran that I believe is dangerous is that enrichment level at 60%. How do you justify that to say that this could be only for civilian use? You can't. Nobody, no scientist in the world, no nuclear scientist in the world worth his salt will tell you that is only civilian use being considered there. Obviously, it's not.
So Leon? Unless you've heard of some other source that Trump has brought out that has said that this is what he's going by, because he said they're 2 weeks away from a weapon. Now, there's two aspects of it. It's the enrichment.
Hold on, Tim. Let me jump in real quick. If you're watching on public access, to get the rest of Tim's comment, you're going to have to go online to hear what he has to say. But back to you, Tim.
So the two things are the enrichment of plutonium up to, for a weapons grade,
uranium to
90%. So let's say that it's possible to go from 60% to 90% of a certain amount of uranium, right?
Yes.
I get the two mixed up. And so you can say that you are 2 weeks away from enrichment to weapons grade plutonium.
Uranium.
Uranium. Okay. Gee whiz. I'll never get it right. But then the next thing is, okay, now how are you going to get that to your target? Well, you got to have a missile, and that takes from what most of the experts are saying that I've listened to, that I've heard, it's 2 to 3 years. So let's just say on the inside, it's a 2-year program. So to say that they are 2 weeks away from a weapon is a little, do you buy into that? Or am I missing something?
I don't think they're saying it's 2 weeks. I think they're saying maybe months is what they're really saying right now. Yeah.
I heard Trump say they're 2 weeks from a weapon.
Trump says.
Okay, Trump. Well, Tim, come on. Trump does say some lunatic things. Okay, we know that. Okay, we all agree on that. Okay.
Well, okay. I guess we can. When it comes to nuclear war, we can chalk that up as to more lunacy.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. Okay. But something though. Do something. Okay, so you create a bomb, and then you must have a delivery system to get it to your target. Okay.
Yes.
Iran already have ballistic missiles. They already have them. They just delivered some into Israel. They were shot down, of course. I think one made it through. One made it through. But they have ballistic missiles, which could easily be converted to deliver a nuclear weapon if they ever develop one.
Okay, so one of the experts that I heard talk about this was, what's the guy's name? He used to work as a UN weapons inspector for the United Nations.
Okay.
And he said they're at least 2 to 3 years away from a delivery system after they've had the enrichment program finished.
Is that
So
Ritter?
you're
Tim?
saying,
Is Ritter the guy that you're talking about? Or?
yes,
Okay.
yeah,
there you
Scott
go.
Ritter. Yeah, Scott Ritter said that they're at least 2 to 3 years. So you're saying Scott Ritter, the UN inspector, is wrong, that all they have to do is slap that puppy on top of the next ballistic missile and off it goes.
It's not a
That
matter of
easy.
just slapping it on, okay? It's not a matter of slapping it on. You need to do some reconfiguration of the missile itself to get it to order to get it from Iran to its target. Let's suppose that, of course, that target is probably going to be in Israel. You'll need to do some work on it. But the fact of the matter is, they already have the technology to deliver the weapon into Israel. They already have the technology.
Okay,
So it's not a matter of to say that they have to develop some new technology or stuff like that. They already have functioning technology to develop a delivery system.
Okay, so Scott Ritter is all wet. The UN inspector, weapons inspector, nuclear weapons inspector, he's all wet, and that he's wrong, and that it only takes, they've already got most of it done, and that it's only going to take a few months. Boom, they have a deliverable nuclear weapon capability in Iran. That's what you are saying.
I'm saying
And
that.
if you are saying that, do you have? See, I have an expert that's on my side saying that I think it's going to be 2 or 3 years. Do you have an expert, a Scott Ritter, on your side that says no, they can get it done in 2 or 3 months?
In fairness, Tim, that's the whole point, is that Tulsi Gabbard is supposedly an expert. I mean, you can believe it or not, but that's who Trump appointed to be at the head of our intelligence agency. And I would assume you would assume she's quoting an expert and not just what somebody tells her to say, I hope.
And the last, and I don't know where you're getting this flip thing. I have never heard this. This is my first exposure to Tulsi Gabbard saying that that Iran is mere weeks or months away from a deliverable nuclear weapon. I never heard her say that at all. All I've heard is to the contrary. They're 2 to 3 years. She's in the Scott Ritter camp. I'm just wondering what expert Leon is drawing from.
Well,
he's a good researcher.
I was going to go with Tulsi, but I know she flipped, so I was going to go with Tulsi.
Here's what she said in the article that I had put up here. She said, "The dishonest media is intentionally taking my testimony out of context and spreading fake news as a way to manufacture division." Gabbard wrote of her to her 600,000 followers. "America has intelligence that Iran is at the point that it can produce a nuclear weapon within weeks to months if they decide to finalize the assembly." That's what Tulsi Gabbard has said.
Okay, so Leon,
I was going to go. Let me finish my point, though, Tim. I was going to go with Tulsi. Okay, even though she flipped based upon, if you look at her full statement, she did talk about the 60%. Beyond what Jason played, she did talk about that 60% stuff like that. But she said also that it will not build in a nuclear weapon. But you know something, Tim? So this might show my bias here a little bit here, okay? You see Scott Ritter? Scott Ritter used to work for the United Nations, all right? Anything that comes from the United Nations, most of the times, 99% of the times, is garbage, period. Simple. They are the people who tell us that climate change is an existential threat to us, to our very existence here on planet Earth. And it's excuse me. It is a lie, okay? We know it's a lie.
Okay.
Sorry,
You're just getting bold on your language now. You heard Trump say it, Leon. You're saying
it's contagious. It's contagious.
You're mega.
It's now become presidential to use the F word.
Exactly. I'm just trying to be presidential here. Okay.
Okay. Well, fair enough. Yeah, that's a good explanation. Okay, what's up next?
Okay.
Well, but this does bring up an interesting issue, though, right? Is that if Tulsi kind of flips, and Leon's trying to say, and she's trying to say that she's been taken out of context. I don't think that's the context that the Congress got from her, but regardless, this is something where it seems very odd. I mean, if she was if this was a concern, it should have been concerned 2 months ago, right? And that's why, to me, it's kind of odd that she would change. And this seems to be kind of this seems to be almost contagious within some of the people we've seen on the Dream Team that's gone in with Trump. Is that a lot of these people have what we think are stellar reputations, and then suddenly they're saying things that before they went into the administration, they're flipping back on them, whether it be talk about Epstein stuff or whatever. We saw Patel and oh gosh, what's the other guy's name?
Pam Bondi.
Well, Pam Bondi said she had the files on her desk. She was going to release them, and that didn't happen. And then Patel and Bongino both said that, yeah, we've seen evidence that, this stuff is that Epstein essentially must have killed himself, when they were some of the biggest promoters of the fact that there's no way that guy killed himself before they went into the administration. So it is a little bit disturbing when we see some of these. I mean, the only person who really didn't flip is Elon, and he just sort of flipped out and was run out of the administration. So
he just left.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, it is disturbing. That's all I'm saying. And it may be that there's nothing untoward here, but it's also could be that there is. And I just think it helps if we all keep our skepticism for big government that we've always had, and don't just get rid of that skepticism because Trump's in office.
No, Jason, and please don't misunderstand my position here. Big government is a threat to us, to all of us. Okay. But I don't want to make blanket statements about that. I mean, when we're looking at something that we know is an actual threat, okay. I see a country who have a divine mandate to destroy another country, and they building weapon grade uranium, enriching weapon grade uranium. I think that's a problem. That's a serious problem, and who knows when they will turn it on us? They already consider us. They already consider us the great Satan anyway. When they will turn it on us?
So Leon, what do you think about this? And Jason, what do you think about this theory then? So so let's say that's the situation, and definitely have the situation with Netanyahu. He thinks for sure, he's always thought they had, they were just weeks away from a bomb. They, weeks went by and they never got one, but anyway, never mind. He thinks they're always almost ready to nuke him off the face of the earth. That's what he's worried about. So the theory is that just like Obama did the Iran nuclear deal to try to placate Netanyahu to so he wouldn't worry about it so much, he'd have inspectors and everything would be above board, so on. Well, maybe Trump thought, well, that's not working. Let's just let's bomb their nuclear sites and obliterate their nuclear program, and then Netanyahu won't have to worry about that happening. And so let me go do that, and then we'll have peace in the region between Iran and Israel. And even though Israel's full of nukes, but Iran has none. And maybe Netanyahu will stop throwing missiles at Iran. What do you think about that idea?
Well, okay. Let me put it this way, okay? And this is an idea that really is not my own original idea, okay? If Israel lay down all its arms today, if we got up tomorrow morning and Israel lay down all its arms, we're not gonna fight anymore. We only want peace. We lay down our arms. We'll never take another offensive action. What do you think will happen to Israel? Let's be real. What will happen to Israel?
So they get to the point where they're disarmed, that kind of thing?
they voluntarily decide to disarm. They're gonna lay down their weapons, and they're not gonna fight anybody anymore. What do you think will happen to them?
Well, in that region of the world, you could say the same thing about any nation. If
Wait.
any nation
Let's answer my question at him. What will happen to Israel?
Well, it would be the same. What would happen to Israel would be the same thing that would happen to any nation in that region if they did the same thing. Is that they would be attacked by their neighbors.
Well, Tim, one thing I would add to that, though, is that might be true, but I don't think they would celebrate quite as hard as they would with Israel. I think we know they'd be dancing in the streets if it were Israel. But you might be right that these guys might attack any of their neighbors if they lay down their arms.
At least it would depend. Shia and Sunni. I mean, the Shia and the Sunni hate each other. Much, if not more.
Iraq and Iran fought a nuclear war some years ago. I think it was in the 1980s.
So what I've said is not all that wrong.
But the point is, though, the point I'm trying to make here, if Israel lay down arms and nobody else does, Israel will disappear from the face of the earth. If Iran lays down arms, and Israel keeps his arms, Israel will not attack them anymore. But somebody else might. Okay, somebody else might. But the fact of the matter is, though, Israel cannot lay down his arms. There are too many people trying to wipe it off the map.
Okay.
Too many.
Okay, but correct. Yes, you were right, and they would be attacked. But right now, Israel's been attacking a lot of their neighbors. Okay.
They didn't start the war, Tim. They didn't start the war. Iran started that war.
Which one? Are you talking about?
This war that started with the October 7th. It would start the October 7th. Israel did not start that war. Iran started it. And you might say, wonder what am I talking about? Who do you think is funding Hamas?
I know what you're talking about. But,
who do you think is funding Hamas?
And
Hezbollah.
If you here's the thing, okay, because I'm not an expert in the region, but Scott Horton
I only play one on TV. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're one up on me because Scott Horton says that this connection between Iran and Hamas is threadbare at best. Okay, they according to him, they did not participate materially in okay, so they send them some of the rockets and things like that, but it's anyway, and I don't know enough about it to really talk about it, but I put it this way: there are critics to that theory that if it wasn't for Iran, Hamas would have done nothing, because they didn't use much. They used AK-47s and ultralights. I mean, they didn't need much, and so. And they killed, how many people did they kill on that October 7th attack?
1,300.
1,300. How many Palestinians have been killed since then?
After you start a war, you can't complain about that, quite frankly.
Okay, well.
You cannot complain about that after you start a war.
Jason, do you know approximately?
It's about 40,000. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's about 40,000. But let me say, you cannot complain about that after you start a war.
Yeah.
But the answer is about 40,000.
Well, my point is that Israel has responded actually with us. I mean, of course, we've responded because it was all our bombs that leveled the whole place. Now, the place is flat as a pancake now, okay, Palestine.
You're talking about Gaza.
Gaza now. You talk about Gaza.
Yeah, it's flat as a pancake, okay? There ain't nothing left. They're going to bulldoze it all to flatten it even more. But the point is that, okay, they retaliated and then some, all right? Okay, maybe you say all bets are off, but... and maybe you're right, but they have retaliated, and we have retaliated right along with them with our money and our debt money for 500-pound bombs. So,
but Tim, I think here's the bigger issue, and you kind of brought this up earlier, and you guys were saying, well, who started it? And I this is part of the problem, right? Is this is not easy lines to draw. I mean, how often has Netanyahu been trying to get us to attack Iran, right? I mean, this isn't like this
forever.
is the first time. Yeah. So, I mean, these are things where they're not just one person at the other's throat. This has kind of been a back and forth, and it really begs the question for the average citizen. I don't think most of us know. And the idea that, we think we should be over there policing it. I mean, I'm not necessarily saying Israel's wrong in all this. I'm just saying that I don't think that most of us as citizens have enough knowledge of the situation to really understand. I certainly I would say, hey, if I had to have a place to live in one of those places, I would choose Israel because it seems a lot closer to the values that we have here. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everything that's been done in the past is just, right? And I just don't know. So
yeah.
Well, just a little while ago, we were talking about the dangers, the very dangers right here in this great land of ours, the dangers of having a complacent citizenry. Okay? We spoke about that. Well, Gaza has the same problem. Okay? Hamas came to power. They were elected, first of all, but then they killed off all of their opposition. And those people in Gaza have tolerated them for the last 20 years or whatever it is. They never had an election after that. So if Hamas is going to act in their name, then they're responsible for whatever Hamas goes and do. They never objected to them. They never tried to kick them out of power. They never tried to do any of that. Okay? Hamas enriched himself. Where do you think they got the money from to build the extensive tunnels they have right now? Where did they get the money to shoot missiles after missiles after missile into Israel that they have been doing for the last 20 years? Where did they get the money for those things? Where do they get the money to make all those billionaires out of the leaders of Hamas and they could live in comfort in Qatar? Where does all that money come from? Those are some of our tax dollars we're talking about, by the way. Okay? So we cannot come now. You start a war and then you use all the money that was given to you, that from us, from Europe, from England, from every place else in the world, were given to you. You use all of that money to enrich yourself and to keep your people impoverished, to feeding them this garbage about, they're going to defeat the great Satan. Okay? That is what they've been feeding them instead of feeding them food. And now they went and they started the war, and now they're taking the repercussions of the war, and now everybody want to cry about genocide? Give me a break, please.
Oh, okay, well then if we're going to go back that far, let's go back to when Netanyahu materially helped Hamas come to power. You remember that part? Because that's undisputable.
Let me say one thing, Tim. Tim, could I just say one thing before you continue?
Netanyahu ought to bomb himself because he's part of he's what helped Hamas come into power. So if you're going to go back that far, okay, well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Leon.
No, could I say one thing, okay? And I'll let you finish, please. I am not here to defend every action of the Israeli government. I am not here for that, okay? I am here to defend one thing and one thing only. Israel has a right to exist, and everybody in the world should recognize that right. That's all I want to say. Now, Israel, with that desire to exist as a nation, they have done some very stupid things. One of them you just raised. Netanyahu did help Hamas come to power. Absolutely true, undisputed. They have done some stupid things in their desire to stay alive. They thought they could have worked with Hamas. They could have worked out a deal with Hamas and get peace in the area. They can't work with these people. But that was a stupid thing.
That wasn't the reason. Yeah. The reason was because he knew Hamas would go after them, and then they would have an excuse to go blast Palestine to rubble, which is finally what they got.
I ain't going there with that conspiracy thing. No, I ain't going there.
And you've heard the theories, Leon, because you pay attention to this a lot, is that October 7th was an inside job. It was allowed to happen because Israeli defense is better than that. And that they allowed it to happen to give another false flag kind of thing, to give everybody an excuse to go level Palestine. It's just a land grab. Palestine wants Israel, Israel wants Palestine, and Israel's now achieved that. They have gotten Palestine, and it's getting paved for the future complete Israel. takeover. It'll be part of Israel. So it's just a land grab. It's just a typical land grab, and we need to stay out of land grabs in the Middle East. If you ask me. Now the question about nuclear weapons, that's a different thing, because they can, we don't want rogue nations to have nuclear weapons. That's all. Yeah.
Well, Leon, there's one thing I wanted to jump on that we kind of skated past a little while ago, but when you said that the people of Gaza have to be responsible for who they elected, and I actually, even though there's a lot of people that would not agree with you with that, I actually kind of agree with you with a lot of that. However, that sword cuts both ways. Think of all of the places that we have blindly put our own military into throughout the world. And like you said, our citizens are out to lunch too on most of it. I mean, the idea that we should say, hey, oh my God, they're attacking Americans somewhere. Well, I mean, if we are attacking other people in places, right, doesn't that same logic apply to us as well as what you're saying the citizens of Gaza it applies to? Or Palestine?
Well, first of all, Jason, even though, yes, you could point to Chile, where we actually assisted in getting rid of Allende, and okay, you could point to that. You could point to Iran, as a matter of fact, where we have got rid of Mossadegh. You could point to those things. I'm not going to argue those points with you that we have done some stupid things overseas, in the foreign world, in the foreign theater, shall we say. However, there's no place in the world today where we have a military base that the government of that country do not want us there, and we still insisting on staying. Where is that happening today?
Right, but that's not the only metric, Leon. Like, if, for instance, if
what's the other metric then?
Well, that's what I'm trying to get to. Suppose
there's one place.
Hold on a second, Tim. Yeah, hold on a second. Suppose you live in a Middle Eastern country, and you watch a bolt shoot from the air and blow up your neighbor's house, and they say, "Oh, don't worry, the United States, we're just policing the world against bad guys, and we determined that was a bad guy," right? And how many cases? I mean, we saw this from Julian Assange, where he exposed that we had killed a bunch of reporters, out there, with a gunship, and he was harassed for showing us that truth, right? But I'm just saying that if you are living in one of those other places and the justice is simply, oh, don't worry, the United States is flying around and its hand of justice will come down like God from the sky. You know what I mean? That's and the idea that most of us aren't really cognizant of it. I mean, if we all totally believed in it, then I would say, hey, okay. But most of us, like you were saying, we're complacent. We don't even know what's happening. Oh, that's all I'm saying as far as that goes.
Well, fair enough, Jason. I did start by statement by saying we have done some stupid things in the world, some absolutely stupid things. We have. Nobody's arguing that point. Okay, and I think any military power who have a place in the world as the United States does, they're gonna make missteps at times. But I believe, and I think there's good evidence to prove what I'm about to say. I believe that underlying net, our projection of our military might is a good thing. Whenever there's a disaster anywhere in the world, who do they call on? The 3 M's. The 3 M's. Men, money, and machinery. From where? From the evil United States. They always call on them. Okay? So I'm not saying we haven't done some damn stupid things. We have. We really have. But the projection of the military might of the United States on net is a good thing. And I think it's something worthy of our support, quite frankly.
Well, just consider that literally the area that we're in right now, we installed the Shah of Iran. Then when he was deposed, then we backed Saddam Hussein, an absolute monster, to go in and attack the people of Iran. And then we turned around and we had to attack our monster, Saddam Hussein. And, I mean, it does seem like one step after another, at least in that region. And I'm sure there's some success stories in other places, but it seems to be an absolute disaster in that region, all of our footprints. So
I was just going to respond to you, though, Jason, with that very same thing you just said. Yes, we could look at the disasters. You could talk about Mossadegh. You can talk about Allende in Chile. You could talk about we took part in what's that guy name in from the Congo? I can't remember his name right now. We did take part in all of that, okay? But you know what? Never get discussed anywhere. We never talk about the successes that we have had because of the projection of our military might. We never talk about it. Never. We always will talk about our failures, our mess ups, and we have had a few. We have had quite a few. But look at what we did during World War II. I mean, I think that was great. I mean, we lost a lot of young men in World War II. A lot of them came back injured and have suffered through the rest of their life because of that. But World War II was one of our great successes. But these are the kind of things.
Too.
Huh?
It was the last success.
I wouldn't say that. No.
And quite possibly.
Name one. Okay.
What is that? What's it like?
Vietnam, complete failure. Okay.
Yeah.
Korea, still ongoing. It's just an armistice. So, it was just a stalemate. Boom. So basically all the men that went over there fought and died, came back, and what happened? Well, it didn't move. Maybe you could say it, we held them back, but basically a failure. Iraq, a complete failure. If you look at now, Shia has taken over where Sunni once had reign, and who is number one Shia country in the Middle East is Iran. So we basically paved the way for Iran and Al-Qaeda and in Iraq. And then Syria now, oh boy, we got rid of bad old Assad. And by the way, Syria is where there's an American base and it's been there for years, even under Assad, and Assad didn't want it there. But, what's he going to do? Attack it? No. So
that story is a little more complicated, I think, but go ahead.
Well, okay, but it's not being invited by the government that runs the country, okay? Bottom line,
that story is a little more complicated.
Everywhere we are, people invite us there. So now Al-Qaeda, again, our supposed enemy, we are doing the work for Al-Qaeda. And we also, if anybody goes into Iran, I forgot Afghanistan, complete, total, abject failure, a fool's errand if ever there was. And then we have Iran now, and if there is a power void in there, guess who is ready and waiting to go in and fill that void? And it's our good old buddies, now our friends, Al-Qaeda. Okay, so we fail. Everything we touch turns to the ugly, smelly brown stuff.
Well,
Tim, no, I have to answer this.
Hold on. I got to move us on to the next topic, but you can briefly step on the ugly, smelly brown stuff real quick.
No, Tim, you know what you just did there? What you just did, fail. It's just like, whenever someone takes a gun and kills somebody in the United States, we always hear people screaming about gun control. We never hear about all the lives that have been saved because somebody had a gun. And this is exactly what's happening in the U.S. military right now. Okay? We never
Leon,
talk about...
How about we just send them guns and we don't get involved?
Yeah. No, but we're talking about fail. And we never talk about the fact is because of our presence, we don't have more wars and more destruction going on in the world. Nobody talks about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right.
Same story with the gun control advocates.
Well, as much as this topic is dividing us,
I get the analogy.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, as much as this topic is, that's what I'm trying to do here. As much as this topic is dividing us, it's also massively dividing MAGA. And so that's one of the things I wanted to show here real quick. So it's people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Thomas Massey. These are a lot of people who are more on the right spectrum of politics than the left, and they are finding that the promise of MAGA is that, you know, we were supposed to be putting America first, and how does this serve American interests? And so I thought there was a pretty instructive interview on this where Tucker Carlson interviewed Ted Cruz on, this is before we actually overtly got into the war by dropping those bombs. And so I'm going to play this video because it really does get down to a lot of the stuff we've been talking about here.
Okay, so you topple the regime and by whatever means. What happens then? How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah.
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's,
because,
it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay, this is cute.
It's not
okay.
even, you don't know anything about Iran. So
okay, I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
You're the one who
don't know
claims
anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country.
So Tucker made the critical point of why are we engaging in foreign wars in places where not only do the citizens maybe not even be able to find this places on a map or understand the people, but the leaders in our government who are pushing us towards this don't understand it.
I mean, not against Trump, and you know that.
But you're against his foreign policy.
I think that we should be very careful about entering into more foreign wars that don't help us when our country is dying.
When you say
and our
don't
country
help
is
us,
dying.
Look, yes, focus on our country. I'm all for it. But the naivete.
You don't even know how much money this costs. You don't know anything about the country whose government you want to overthrow, and you're calling me reckless.
So Tucker unearthed another important point in this interview, which was what was our actual level of involvement at the point they made this interview when the official word was we weren't involved in this war, but it sounds like maybe we were to some degree.
We're carrying out military strikes today.
You said Israel was.
Right, with our help. I said we. Israel is leading them, but we're supporting them.
Well, you're breaking news here because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive capacity.
No, we're not bombing them. Israel's bombing them.
You just said we were.
We are supporting Israel.
High stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying the United States government is at war with Iran right now, people are listening.
Okay, we are not bombing them.
Oh, okay.
Israel is bombing them.
And then we bombed them. But anyway, this is really a big knife through the heart of MAGA. Now it sounds like some of the MAGA people like Tulsi and others seem to be getting back on board with the majority of MAGA on this, but what do you guys think? And what does this portend to Trump's future agenda as well? Because, if this is successful, then maybe it actually solidifies a lot of the other stuff Trump wants to do. And if it's unsuccessful, then maybe it just shatters the whole Trump train, the whole MAGA train. What do you guys think about all this?
Well, I don't think it shatters the Trump train. I think anytime you have a coalition, and Trump formed a coalition especially for his second presidential run. Well, no, that was his third presidential run. For his third one, he lost the second one. He formed a really good coalition to do that and got him back the presidency. However, it was a coalition, and there are different wings of that coalition, obviously. And obviously, we're going to have conflicts at points on particular issues. But I don't think in the totality of it, the Trump's agenda is lost, or there's something wrong. That there's something wrong. It's about to break up into tiny pieces, and people are not going to be supporting Trump anymore and that kind of stuff. I think one of the polls even showed that Trump is more popular now after the strikes than he was before the strikes. But there are going to be people who disagree. Tucker is one of them. Marjorie Taylor Greene is another, and I'm sure you could find several people who was in that MAGA coalition who disagree with Trump on this issue. But I don't think the agenda overall is lost.
Any thoughts on it, Tim?
Well, okay. I've said it before. I'll say it again. It's really make Israel great again. That's the agenda. That's really what Trump's all about. He doesn't he's not beholden to America because his second, at least his second, I don't know about the first guy, but Miriam Adelson is, just pro-Israel. I mean, even though she lives in America and her and her husband made their billions in America in the casino business, gambling. She was the second highest donor at $106 million, and she's getting her money back right now, which is make Israel great again.
Well, it's funny too. I just wanted to interject real quick, Tim, because one of the things that Trump said in a recent interview too is he started, I think, saying MIGA in terms of make Iran great again as well. In trying to reseat this, which is kind of like a migration from the whole point, right? This is the point people like Tucker tried to say in that interview. Our country, if you look at the debt and the problems we're facing, we might be kind of facing an existential cancer, an internal threat to our, our country's solvency. And the idea that, we're running around the world trying to make everybody else great is kind of odd. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. And so the debt that we're experiencing, and Trump is increasing spending. So at the end of his 4-year years, he will have done none of the things that he said in his campaign, like reducing the debt and reducing deficits and so on. That's not going to happen. It's just going to get worse and worse. I mean, he's for adding another $5 trillion in his big beautiful bill over the next 3 years. I mean, are you kidding me? It's more debt and more deficits, and so. He's fallen off the wagon on all that. And so if anybody believes this guy, I mean, he's just in it for himself. Okay, it's like, I hate to burst anybody's naivety, their naive bubbles, but he's just like anybody else, any other politician. You can't trust him as far as you can throw his 300-pound body.
Somebody's body shaming somebody here, trying to make enemies of Democrats too.
Well, I'm not going to sit around here and sound like I'm going to defend the Trump agenda or anything like that, Tim. However, I don't think the Trump agenda is in as disarray as I think you're suggesting. The things that he is trying to accomplish, or certainly have not done so. He have not reached the point where he can say mission accomplished, shall we say, using George Bush's vernacular. He cannot say that. But in terms of his overall agenda, I don't think that is lost. I really don't.
I would push back just a little bit, though. I mean, he did say this will be known as the 12 Days War. Now, it's not quite the same as saying mission accomplished, but it's pretty close. I mean, if you're saying this is a 12-day war, that means the war is over. So yeah, I don't know. And maybe it is. In which case, he is going to really have one heck of a legacy if this all works out for him. But it just feels like a lot of the same old. Some things. There's just a lot of worrying things here,
Well, Jason, I think at the very least, while there are some very, 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 very concerning clouds on the horizon, obviously the debt being one of them, the size of government being one of them, obviously these things are very, very concerning. But at the very least, I think we should give the man a little bit of runway to see what he could accomplish. At the very least. Instead of us sitting around here trying to say, oh my God, the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. I mean, honestly, we just had a major constitutional crisis. Major for the last 4 years. Okay? We don't even know who was running the government. And nobody even care about that. Nobody cares about that.
I think we cared about it a lot. We talked about it a lot.
We spoke about it, but we never ever sat around and really talked about the depth of the constitutional crisis that was unfolding before our eyes. We did talk about it. You're right, Tim. We did talk about it. We made a lot of fun of Joe Biden. That's what we did on this show. We did. I'm not arguing that point. But in terms of the depths of the constitutional crisis that was unfolding before our eyes, I don't think we ever discussed that. I don't remember. Maybe I'm forgetting something.
Yeah.
The point I'm trying to make here, could we at the very least give the man a little bit of runway to institute, implement his agenda, and let's see if this thing could work out. I don't know if it will, but at least give him the runway.
Well,
okay.
I think
see if he's running the country, or what is it? ALPAC? What was that pack?
APAC.
APAC. Yeah, maybe in this situation, maybe even in Biden's situation, it was APAC running the country. But you know, there's a school of thought that's talking about this constitutional crisis that Leon's bringing up, which is saying that it's really not the president that runs things; it's people behind the scenes. Is that what you're saying, Leon? Is that the constitutional crisis?
I was talking about Joe Biden in particular.
Yeah, but you were referring to he's not really running the country. He's not being a president. It's people behind him.
Yeah, his staffers are running the country. Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's a school of thought that says all presidents, you know, even the so-called best, the most brightest of them all, are really being run behind the scenes by everybody. And
by who? Run by who?
People, you know, the deep state, if you want to call it that, people in the various PACs, and vested interests, military-industrial complex, and so on and so forth. They're really telling them what to do. And in some cases, if they don't do what they're told to do, they'll assassinate them, like in the situation with John Kennedy and others. Anyway, it's. I'm not saying it. I'm buying it. You know, buying into 100% of all the whole thing, because there seems to sure be a lot of people that want to put a lot of money into the election of a president, and it sure seems to be that the electorate is awfully vested into who is the president. Is it my guy or is it your guy? And the reason for that is because these presidents and the executive branch in general has been given so much power over so many people in so many ways that they have become monarchs now. We basically are, you can call it all different things. You can call it a constitutional republic, but we really, in action, it's just run like a monarchy or an oligarchy.
Well, you know, Tim, if it's really and truly the deep state that is running the country, and when you don't do what the deep state say, they'll try to take you out. You know, Trump. There were 2 assassination attempts upon Trump. Based upon your logic, you should be supporting that man. Based upon your own logic. Those 2 attempts are probably his best calling card right there. There you go.
But
there you go.
But
well, you just remember, not all concentrated interests are the same concentrated interests, right? I mean, you could have competing concentrated interests trying to control power. So anyway.
All right.
Boy,
yeah.
Boy, that is a conspiracy in a conspiracy. That's really good. That's really good.
Well, speaking of conspiracies, and we're getting close to the end of the show here, but the biggest conspiracy is, how is The View still on the air? And Bill Maher recently pointed this out. He kind of said, "What are we going to do about The View?" And part of this is because of, I mean, we've heard no end to the woke crap and how much this team was totally in on every defense of Biden, even when everybody could tell he was a vegetable. In fact, even after he was out of office, they still brought him on and told him how great he was. Right? So, I mean, it's just absolutely nuts. But they kind of went over the top in their comparison to the United States and Iran recently, and Bill Maher noted that, and I think it's worth seeing that, because this really indicates just how nuts the left has become.
What do you think of Whoopi Goldberg saying it's worse to be a black person in America today than a woman in Iran? I say, we were talking about the trans issue before, and the New York Times really has come over on that to the sort of the sensible liberal, not crazy woke position. I think this is a great first step toward getting the Democrats back to sanity. And a second good step would be, we got to do something about The View.
So let's see what level of insanity it finally took to trigger Bill on The View.
But just remember, too, the Iranians literally throw gay people off of buildings. They don't adhere to basic human rights.
Listen, here's the thing. Let's not do that, because if we start with that, we have been known in this country to tie gay folks to the car.
Where the Iranian regime is today,
they used to just keep hanging black people. So
it is not even the same. I couldn't step
wait. That's not what you mean to say. It is the same.
No, it's not. The year 2025 in the United States is nothing like if I step foot wearing this outfit in Toronto.
Whoopi is absolutely determined to equivocate the apartheid conditions today that exist for women in some Islamic countries with the conditions that existed maybe during Jim Crow about 60 plus years ago in the United States.
That's why I am saying that it is the same. Murdering someone for their difference is not good, whoever does it. It's not good. So that's why I said you weren't saying what I heard was not what you meant.
I think it's very different to live in the United States in 2025 than it is to live in Iran.
Not if you're black.
Not for everybody.
Not if you're black.
Guys, don't go to...
But every day, we are worried. Do we have to be worried about our kids? Are our kids going to get shot because they're running through somebody's neighborhood? They are not big deals, and I don't mean to say they're not big deals to you.
So what we're seeing here with Whoopi is just the race hustle on steroids. She is literally saying that the topic of race trumps everything, even to the point where she is a successful black woman in this country. There are many other like her, and yet if she were in some of these other countries, she wouldn't even have the freedom to choose what she wants to wear and possibly be restricted to where she got to go. So this is just nuts. I mean, we even have here an image of women on a beach in these hijabs, which, you know, it's one thing if somebody chooses to wear that, but I mean, women really don't have the choice in a lot of these countries.
Nobody wants to diminish the very real problems we have in this country. That is no one's intent. But I think it's important we remember there are places much darker than this country and people who deserve rights.
Not everybody feels that way. Not everybody feels that way. Listen, I'm sorry. You know, when you think about the fact that we got the vote in 1965.
Okay, they don't have free and fair elections in Iran. It's not even the same universe. They can't go out of their house. The women.
You know what? There's no way I can make you understand.
Let me try.
And so there you go. So and you know, as far as what some of the defenders try to say that, hey, things really aren't that bad. I mean, here's just a few websites, and here's one that talks about some of the restrictions for women. And this is one of the crazy in Iran, I believe it is. They cannot touch another man who's, you know, outside of their family, right? I mean, imagine having that kind of restriction on you just to touch somebody, right? Let alone what you have to wear. And I mean, you know, as far as they talk about in some of these countries, they have education for women. Well, in some of these countries, they don't. And they literally, Malala is a very famous woman who got the Nobel Peace Prize. She got shot in the face for trying to get an education in Afghanistan. So, I mean, this is, you know, this is kind of the world that some of these countries exhibit. So, I mean, the idea that we have this almost this hatred on the left for the United States, it just seems absolutely nuts, right? You know, the idea that these are equal things, the fact that there may have been some problems in the past, that means that everything today that we're seeing in these other countries is equal to what the United States is today. So what do you guys think about that?
When a racist grifter speak, we should all listen. You know, we should all listen, because these racist grifters make money from all of us. Because we have people like Ibram X. Kendi, we have people like Al Sharpton, and the whole clan, the whole bunch of them, and Whoopi is among them too. Racist grifters who could always turn to, oh, these poor, suffering blacks. Oh my God, it's just as bad as it was in the 1950s as it is today. And on they go. These racist grifters are nothing but a disease upon our society. That's what they are.
And I would just say that while it's tragic that girls get shot for going to school and women have all these restrictions in Islamic states, and so on, it's awfully pompous of us to think that we have some like higher calling to go and change that society, as if we could, which we found as hard as we tried, we never could, because we failed miserably every time we tried it. And that's as it should be, because we have our own culture, and some cultures are like ours, like in Europe and so on, but some cultures are vastly different. And to say that that we have, that we can judge their culture as being beneath ours and that has to be changed is, the height of, what is it, pomposity or whatever.
Well, and Tim, I'm completely with you there on the idea that for us making judgments about how other countries are living and therefore thinking we should go in and be the savior of that country. But it was the more of the issue was, at least with Whoopi's comment, is she was trying to say that essentially these cultures are equivalent today as far as their respect to individual liberty. And I think that is, far from an equivalency. And that's exactly the point Bill Maher was trying to say. I mean, and he's made the point on his show before that, some of these Islamic countries, it is literally an apartheid state for women, and that's half the population. So it's just absolutely nuts, the idea to say that, United States is no better than that.
Yeah, well, let me. Yeah, I agree with Bill, and why anybody would listen to this group of women is beyond me. But so I agree with Bill.
Yeah. I want to talk about the culture issue that Tim raised, okay? And let me just be clear. Any country that does not respect individual rights, I believe individual rights are human rights. Any country that does not respect that, whether it's for women, whether it's for any ethnic minority or whatever it is, any country that does not do that is downright evil and deserve to be destroyed, period.
Ooh,
just as long as you're not making us the destroyer, Leon.
Well, who else is going to destroy? We're the policemen of the world. We're the most powerful nation in the world. So when Leon says they ought to be destroyed, what Leon is saying is that the United States needs to go into massive, 10, 20 more trillion dollars in debt.
I did not say that.
Blow them off the face of the earth.
I did not say that.
Well, then what are you saying? What did you just say? They must be. Did you use the word destroyed?
I said any government or any country.
It's a culture, Leon. It's a whole culture.
Well, I don't care. I don't care whether it's culture or anything. Some cultures are good and some cultures are bad. Okay.
Okay.
And if in a culture you do not respect individual rights, if in a culture you do not respect individual rights, then you have no right to be existing.
Okay.
Okay, Tim, wait, let me show you something here. In South Africa, before 1994, the individual rights of blacks were not recognized. And everybody in the world was jumping up and down about that. Everybody was making all kind of noise about that. And they should have, because individual rights are human rights. Everybody was quarreling and arguing about that. But nowadays, we look around the world and we see women in some countries, we see in other ethnic minorities in some countries, and they're living under the worst conditions you could imagine. And you know what we say? We cannot judge those cultures because every culture has their own ways and everything could be nice and wonderful for them, but we just don't understand it. This is nonsense. Individual rights are human rights. And if people do not have the human rights, those countries, the governments of those countries do not deserve to exist.
Well, in one analogy I would give is if you think of the state of Utah, where we have polygamy has been a part of the culture in the past, at least, usually women had the right to try to get away. I mean, they could be part of the polygamous relationship, but they didn't have to be. I mean, I guess there's a little bit of confusion when they're marrying them off when they're 15 or something like that. But the point is, that's much different than some of these Islamic countries where they can have a polygamous society in some of these places, and the woman really doesn't have much right to reject in a lot of these cases. So
well, in nearly all of those cases, think about this polygamous thing and stuff like that. A man could marry, well, in Islamic countries, a man could marry up to 4 women. He could have up to 4 wives. You think a woman could do that? Could she have 4 men? Could she?
Not be stoned to death.
There we go. That answers my question. That answers my question.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
that's some rock hard reality.
So Iran has 93 million people. Is that how many they have?
Somewhere 93, 92, somewhere around there. Yes.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Okay. Well, and I don't know what would happen if the government was deposed, but it takes a lot of treasure and it takes a lot of lives, and the only country that can topple governments that Leon seems to want to topple is the United States. And the United States, being 37 trillion in debt, will be 137 trillion in debt and still have more places to topple, because we're not very good at it. We lose. I showed you a bunch of examples where we lost those big endeavors, and that's a big endeavor. So I suggest we do what the original founders, including Thomas Jefferson, probably especially Thomas Jefferson, and just live in peace and trade with our neighbors, and not have them have to be just like us, because it's a fool's errand to go around trying to change everybody to be just like us. That's it.
For the record, I never said it was the job of the United States. Just for the record.
Yeah, you didn't, but the implication is there's only one country. It ain't going to be Germany. I'll guarantee that. It ain't going to be England. They just don't have the treasure, because we have the treasure, but we just print it up by the Federal Reserve. So that's our treasure now. That's all it is, too, by the way.
Yeah, and this ultimately comes down to a story of treasure. One quick last shot as we leave, but going back to that chart of debt to GDP, when we talk about nation building, it is odd that World War II, we see that's where we were at our highest point before. Well, I think we've gone past that now. But the issue is that we were over 100% of debt to GDP at that point for fighting the war, which is kind of understandable. You do what you have to do if it's a matter of survival, maybe. But when we were nation building in Japan and Germany after that war, look at how we were going down the slope of debt to GDP. I mean, it's like, what's different, about today? It's just, we're messing up right and left, and we're just going straight uphill. It's absolutely nuts. And if we were trying to look at the debt, here's World War II, even the debt decreased. The raw debt decreased after World War II. I mean, what the hell are we doing? It's we are completely mismanaging ourselves into a catastrophe, and the real threat is the debt. That is the thing that kills countries. So
the debt and the size of the federal government, well, some state governments too, are really the biggest threats that we face. Really.
Yeah. I think we can agree on that.
And still, just to be clear, I never said it was the job of the United States to go change these countries. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I implicated that myself.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Well, I think that's about the end of our show. But if next week's show, we've got Mike Termott back on. He was the vice presidential Libertarian candidate this last time around, and he has actually switched to the GOP. He is part of the Republican Liberty Caucus now. So it's going to be interesting hearing some of his thoughts on why he did that. So definitely check in with us next week to hear more about our discussion with him on that. And until next time, think of what you can do in your own community to move the ball for liberty. And until our next show, stay tuned and stay free.
Oh, yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.